Good afternoon. At this afternoon's Intelligence Forum's Who Are You podcast, we're very privileged to have Rob Woodward. Rob has a serial career, but I'm not going to do him justice by that introduction. So I'm going to enable him to track his professional journey by asking him the first question. Rob, tell me about your professional journey so far.
Well, and great to be here, Harry. So in terms of the summary of my professional journey, I divide it into three parts. So the first part was I held senior advisory positions. So initially at Touche Ross, which became Deloitte, where I specialized in strategic consulting and I headed up the UK strategic consulting practice called Braxton. And I also focused on the telecom, media and technology sector, and I held the position of European lead in the consulting business. I then moved into investment banking, and I spent a number of years at Warburgs, which then became UBS, ultimately being the co-head of the European technology business. And then I'm now moving into the second phase of my career, which is a series of executive positions. So firstly, as the commercial director of Channel 4, and then secondly, I was put in by shareholders to lead the turnaround of the Scottish Media Group, and I stayed lead at the helm of Scottish Media Group, which became STV, for 10 years. And then 8 years ago, I moved on from that position, and I have a full portfolio of non-exec positions, largely chair positions. So they cover and they have covered a number of different sectors. So PLCs. So I've recently become the chair of Vistry, the FTSE 250 house building company. I'm the chair of the marketing services business called Ubiquity. I also chair two private equity-backed businesses, one called Lumi, which is an education business in Norway. The second is Zeta, which is a digital display business based in Sweden. Along the way, I've also undertaken a number of government roles, including chairing the UK's Met Office and also being the UK government representative on the board of the global satellite business called OneWeb. And I've also chaired two universities, City University in London and Glasgow Caledonian University. And along the way, I've overseen a number of exits, including Blanco, which was a technology business, software business, which I chaired. So that's a potted history of my professional career.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And in your earlier working life, was there a seminal moment or an event that had a profound effect on your later working life?
No, that's a good question. I would say that I think my father was absolutely instrumental in kind of underscoring, I think, the importance of education, the importance of trying new things, and the importance of doing whatever you do to the best of your ability. And he also kind of instilled in me this sense of really important fundamental values and the notion of kind of being your whole self kind of across your life. But I think the key was his kind of real focus on driving a winning mentality, which combined kind of both I did on the sports field as well as round the board table. And then I would say the other person who went on to be an enormous influence on my life, sadly no longer with us, is John Connolly, who was the senior partner of Touche Ross and became the senior partner of Deloitte. He was an absolutely visionary leader and really has turned the accounting profession in particular, stroke advisory sector, kind of on its head, and was he absolutely kind of instilled in me the constant need for change, embracing change, and make sure that you're at the forefront of change and making change happen, as opposed to change happening to you.
So in your great experience of working in boards. What would you say are the key ingredients to making a really good board work?
We could talk for ages about that topic because I think about it all the time. I think my start point would be that a board, I view the board as a team. So in the way that a chief executive thinks about his or her executive team as their team, I think about the board, both executive and non-executive, as a team, and I think that's an important start point. I also try and create a positive environment around a board table because the only way that I know of kind of instilling trust and openness and open conversation, open debate is by having that a sense of positivity, so kind of a safe environment. I think I have an expectation, particularly that non-execs, that of course we have an important governance role to play in holding executives to account, but equally we're also there to support the executive using our experiences from elsewhere for the betterment of the company and all stakeholders. I'm a huge believer in diversity. I think that and diversity I view through many lenses, but diversity of views, diversity of skills, diversity of background, diversity of gender, etc. But it makes boardrooms a better place in my experience. I'm also very clear as a chair, so I think nobody's in any doubt in terms of kind of when discussions have taken place in terms of kind of well, what comes next. So just just make sure that everybody is clear about that. And I'd also say the relationship between the CEO and the chair is fundamental. That kind of absolutely kind of sets a tone for how the board is going to operate. And I'm also a stickler for making sure that non-execs don't interfere in what I would consider to be operational matters. So I'm very clear on that non-exec executive divide. And then finally, just to throw in the mix, I think that somebody who's often kind of overlooked is the company secretary and the company secretaries can play, particularly in the delivery of making sure that the boardroom is a positive environment, as I mentioned earlier.
So, thank you. And in your view, what are the greatest challenges and opportunities that businesses in the UK face today? And I know that's another one where we could be here for several days, but
Well, we really could, and unfortunately, over the last kind of couple of years or so, we've kind of ended up focusing more on the kind of the challenges. So, and we've got challenges coming both at a macro level, huge amount of uncertainty. We've got the geopolitical instabilities across the globe. But for me, kind of the big unknown is AI and the disruptive influence that AI is going to have. Now, there are two sides to AI. There are huge sets of opportunities going to be driven off it, no doubt about that. But I would suggest pretty much every boardroom in the land is talking about the disruptive effect that AI is going to have and how do boards kind of deal with it. What are you doing to make sure that you're a positive disruptor as opposed to being on the receiving end of disruption? And then I think the other thing that we have to live with, and I think it will get worse, not better, is cyber and cyber security. I think just more, it's becoming a kind of unfortunately something that every organization is having to live with on a daily basis. But having said all that, and particularly around what I said about AI, there's always going to be an opportunity for moments of great kind of disruption. There are always new things that emerge, new things that grow. So I'm an optimist in that I think it's down to boards and leaders to be having the discussions to make sure that they are identifying those opportunities as early in the cycle as possible.
so there's a great deal of discussion about the word growth in the UK. And in your view, how do we obtain more of it?
Well, I think the UK is in a difficult position right now. So there's an awful lot of short-term politically driven thinking. And I think, unfortunately, the kind of the rise of more extremism in politics and people's political persuasions is not a good backdrop for business. Business likes you never get certainty, but business likes as much certainty as possible. So the current short-term turmoil is very unhelpful. And then on top of that, I would say if you look at the UK in comparison with other kind of leading industrialized nations, then our level of productivity is low, and productivity is a key driver for growth. And one way or the other, the UK needs to address that. I think the other issue that we face in the UK is our infrastructure investment. Measured by GDP is low. I've got first-hand experience of that, for example, through my involvement with the housing sector. So the lack of new build homes, not only is it having a dramatic impact on homeless and the number of people who don't have a proper roof over their head, but it also has a knock-on effect kind of right through right through the chain. So, and in particular, it is having a negative effect on workers' mobility across the UK. And then I think I could also point to the transport sector. So kind of rather lackluster approach to HS2, for example. It's taking too long, and I think we've lost the ambition of kind of what it could have delivered. And I could use a similar example with in airports with the kind of the uncertainty over what's going to happen at Heathrow and indeed Gatwick. And then on top of that, I think we've got to get used to finding a way to spend more, invest more in defence. I think the kind of the current conflicts and the uncertainty over the future of NATO, the composition of NATO, they're kind of all leading everybody to believe that actually we do need to find a way of increasing our defence spending. I'd also draw on my knowledge of the higher education sector through chairing universities. I think we have to better align learning with employer needs. And I'd also, if I was in government, I'd also be looking at encouraging more innovation in business, and you could do that through tax breaks, etc. So don't get me wrong, there is a lot of work going on, particularly through the catapults, for example. But it feels to me we don't talk very much about that. We don't place enough importance on the role of the UK economy in supporting future innovation.
So you've touched on this just now. What skills are going to be required of those graduates or people finishing apprenticeships to navigate this world that we're finding ourselves in and will find ourselves in?
So I think just picking up before I answer the question, I'm a huge supporter of apprenticeships of all forms, including graduate apprenticeships, and I think they've got a fundamental role to play. I'd almost go as far as saying that we're probably creating or delivering too many graduates. There's probably overcapacity in the higher education sector, but there's definitely, as far as I can see, undercapacity in the provision of apprenticeships. So the kind of skills that are required. So we need graduates that are digital natives who are kind of very comfortable operating in a digital world. Not programmers, but able to, in particular, use AI as a tool. We need people who are critical thinkers, who can bring kind of human judgment to situations. I think you need to be of a mindset which is the world is going to change, your jobs are going to change, your employer is going to change. So this notion of more agility in the skill set is really important. Collaboration, team skills, less individual skills, but more your ability to kind of operate and foster teamwork. I would also say that in the future, kind of the notion of kind of having strong ethical values and being able to use ethical judgment as well as bringing kind of a strong EQ is going to kind of go up the level of importance. I think certainly when I was coming through the education system, there was a lot of focus on IQ, and I think increasingly you've seen as we're moving into this new digital landscape and a growing importance of the human skills and particularly around EQ. So those are some of the pointers that I'd alight on, Harry.
Rob Woodward, thank you so much for giving your time. And I know that time is a bit of a premium for you, so thank you for it. Deeply appreciated. And I wish you the very best in the coming months. Thank you.
Many thanks.